our presidents, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for what you do for our students across the state. You had mentioned in your testimony that only 23 out of 100 complete their degree. You had mentioned some of the reasons as lack of preparedness, lack of guidance, lack of support. I would also make the argument lack of financial resources would certainly be an issue for many. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about tuition assistance and your opinion specifically on increasing the income eligibility threshold. The last time the income eligibility threshold for the tuition assistance program here in the state of New York was increased was back in the year 2000, and that went from 50,000 household income to 80,000 household income. And certainly, it's my opinion that many middle-class families who have slightly over that 80,000 income, may have 2, 3, 4 kids to put through school, can't do so on that income level, especially when they're paying other middle-class expenses, mortgage, for instance, energy costs. So I was just curious what your opinion would be on whether the state should be looking at raising that income eligibility threshold, especially since it hasn't been increased in the last 15 years. Meanwhile, tuition, inflation costs have increased, of course. So if you care to share your opinion on that.
Well, I think our commitment is to provide access for as many students as possible. This is a decision, of course, that you and the legislature and the governor would have to arrive at in terms of changing the threshold. I will say that a part of the renewal of TAP and the rational tuition plan is that for students, low-income students, for whom our current tuition leaves a gap between TAP and our current tuition, that we pay that difference at SUNY, which I think is a pretty direct way to assist parents, families that just can't quite make that additional reach. But changing the plateau, that I think is a decision that we would be very interested in engaging in, because our goal is to expand access, but it's also a decision that you would have to debate. We have had a review of our TAP program in both by CUNY and SUNY and the independent colleges, and somewhere in our conversation is that review still being, it's not a report ready, but it's okay. The most recent review.
Okay, great. That's something I would definitely like to discuss with you in the future. Here in the state, we have about 26,000 average debt for students graduating. That's just for undergrad. That's not even including graduate students, which brings me to my next point. In 2010, this legislature eliminated tuition assistance program for graduate students here in the state of New York. So if you're a graduate student here in New York, you get absolutely no tuition assistance. So I see proposals like the DREAM Act and others in this budget. And I'm wondering, don't you believe that we should be restoring the tuition assistance program for graduate students here in the state of New York?
Well, I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone that any enablement from the legislature and the governor to buy down tuition would be something in our state's best interest. So we would hardly oppose that.
So I see that your addendum here, and you had mentioned earlier that the SUNY trustees had passed a resolution in support of the DREAM Act in 2012. I was wondering if the SUNY trustees would consider passing a resolution as well to restore the tuition assistance program for graduate students here in the state. It would be something I think that many of our graduate students who are citizens of the state would truly appreciate the support of SUNY as they look to seek higher education, but yet don't have the means to do so.
Well, we have the great good fortune of the board chair in our House today, and I think, again, any policies that would enable more students to have access to both undergraduate and graduate. I will say, and also in addition to Senator Stavisky's questions, that getting students graduated at the undergraduate and the graduate level sooner also brings down cost. And so one of the reasons we're so aggressive about our completion strategies is that we know that saves money too. Great. So it's both the money for tuition, but it's time in rank as well.
Well, the tuition assistance for graduate students cost about $3 million a year. And certainly that is something that I think should be a priority, especially if we're going to be looking to put tuition assistance dollars for other programs. We should certainly look to restore what was eliminated in 2010, because there's so many graduate students in this state that are struggling for higher education. So those are the two things that I've been pushing right now, is that plus increasing the income eligibility for the tuition assistance program, which hasn't been increased in 15 years. I think it's certainly due. I thank you both, all of you, for your time.
We appreciate your advocacy. Thank you.